Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Consulting with Authority. This is your host, Scott Cantrell. Excited to be joined by a friend of mine and someone that I've known for a little while now. Devin DeVries is here with us. Devin is the Vice President of Production at Indie Books International. And for those of you who are careful listeners or watchers of the podcast, you may recognize her last name, DeVries. Recently, I interviewed her father, Henry DeVries, who's the president of Indie Books International. And of course, what Devin probably will be too modest to tell you, but Henry would probably say in a heartbeat is it is Henry's wonderful team, and especially his lovely daughter, Devin, that make him look good at Indie Books International. They are the brain trust behind Henry and all the work that Indie Books International does for their clients. Super, super excited to have Devin with us. She has tremendous expertise in the world in which she works and a lot of insight around business development that we're going to dive into today that I know you'll get a lot of value out of. Devin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Absolutely. Again, my honor to have you. And I wanted to start out the interview today just by having you tell us a little bit about how, your background, how you got to where you are. And just kind of give us that trajectory story a little bit.
Sure. Well, so I've been with Indie Books International since its founding. We're about to turn 8 years old, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
But I was working prior to this, doing e-commerce, website optimization and online marketing in the retail spaces. So I worked in Seattle at Zulily was where I was working.
Yeah.
When Henry and Mark had this idea for a publishing company. And so they were looking for somebody to kind of be the operations control tower back-end person to really, project manage and figure out how to help the authors promote their books once the books were out.
Right.
So they approached me with, kind of an offer I couldn't refuse. So though I did love living in Seattle, at that point I had started to become homesick for California.
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice timing in that regards as well. And I've just always been a book lover and a voracious reader. So it just kind of felt like a natural fit there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I came on board and really just, learned everything I could about the publishing world and how to produce books and, what we needed to really serve our authors. And then I was able to use, the promotional skills and, website building, all of that I already had from my previous kind of corporate career and help our authors that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know Henry and Mark are, and they would agree with us, incredibly lucky that you said yes to the offer that they made that you couldn't refuse. And I certainly understand. Obviously, there's the homesick component around where you grew up and family, but we should mention you're based in Southern California in one of the most beautiful places on the planet, San Diego. So it's certainly an easy place to want to head back to. Seattle is a great city, though, as well. One of the things that I wanted to dive into is focused on your background in promotion and business development and so forth. I've mentioned to you, Devin, that this podcast is for independent consultants. And one of the most common challenges that I hear, and I think you and I have had this conversation, you hear the same thing consistently. The most common challenges or pain points that we hear from the people that we work with is that I want to be in front of enough quality prospects on a consistent basis. And how can I do that? And of course, it's a very big question, a very important question with a lot of different ways to answer that. But tell me, what's your perspective when a potential Indie Books client comes to you and asks you that question? What's your general response? What's the strategic sort of Devin DeVries answer to that question?
Yeah, well, our kind of philosophy is that it's all about, marketing with a book and a speech.
Yeah.
And that is the number one way to attract these high paying clients that we all want.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we always say that a book is the number one marketing tool and a speech is the number one marketing strategy. So they go together and you really use them to, you leverage the book for credibility it allows you to get in front of audiences that you may not have been able to access before. It also as kind of establishes you as an expert, so you can get higher speaking fees and all of that. But then on the other side, what we find is the magic really happens when they get to experience you in a speech. And that's kind of a broad category. What I mean there is just, any way they can interface with you and experience your personality and your style. So that might be, everything from a keynote speech on a big stage all the way down to something like this, a video podcast.
Right.
That's where we find that, that's really what moves people to want to take the next step with consultants in our area.
I think that's a really important note. And so often I will have conversations with potential clients for my own work, which is also in the business development space, which and what they say they want is they just want more appointments, one-on-one appointments with decision makers, which of course, right? I mean, that makes sense. We all want that. But I think so often they're missing the opportunity for that interim step being this authority establishing step of showing and demonstrating their knowledge and their expertise to a group of people prior to having a one-on-one conversation with a decision maker. Because you and I know, and other consultants who have done this know, that if you haven't had any kind of meaningful relationship or engagement with a potential client so far, and you're just thrown on a one-on-one with them, that entire first conversation is and should be, needs to be just really about relationship building and trust building and showing your authority, demonstrating your knowledge and your skill, providing value where you can. It really can't be and shouldn't be a sales conversation in that initial conversation, but it's too soon. Someone doesn't buy from a consultant in a meaningful way until they see that person as an authority and expert. And so what I'm hearing you say is a book helps you accelerate to get to that point as quickly as you can. And a speech is a natural way to demonstrate to a group of people, as opposed to just one at a time, that you have that authority and expertise.
Absolutely. And I think also a lot of it comes down to trust in what we do. If you're going to hire a consultant or a coach, that's a very kind of intimate relationship,
right? And
something that you need to be able to trust them, especially if you're going to be showing them, your business numbers, your intellectual property, all of that.
Yeah.
So you're right. You have to have some intro steps to get there. And, with a book and with presentations and stuff, you can start to kind of build that bridge. And, also, you never want somebody to be like, just trust me, I'm an expert. I know this, I can help you. So you have to kind of demonstrate by things you do that you are in fact the expert you are, and that you do know how to solve the problems that they have. But again, you don't want to come off as a charlatan.
Right. Right. And frankly, often I've fallen into that trap in the past. Just for full disclosure, it is easy when we know as consultants, we have confidence in our own ability and our own skill and our ability to do the thing that we say we can do to deliver value. And so sometimes, because we already have that knowledge and confidence that we can help this person, right? We forget that they don't have that same belief and confidence yet, right? And so it's easy to start selling and talking about what you can do and how you can do it, how you would interface and how you'd engage and what it might cost. And it's easy to go down that path way too soon before the client's ready. And that's when you start to get feedback. Well, your presentation was just too salesy. But it's because they weren't ready for the sell. It's not that it was too salesy in and of itself. It's that the timing was off, right? They weren't ready to hear a sales message. And so, of course, the message that you're giving them, which is a sales message, is going to seem salesy because they're not ready for that. They're not asking for that yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, what you're saying, I think, is really important. Is you've got to take the time to cultivate that relationship and do that. You use the word demonstration to demonstrate your knowledge and your skill, so that they have a perception that you are an authority. Let's talk a little about. I know we've got a lot of authors who are watching and listening to the podcast. We have probably just as many or more aspiring authors. who are listening to the podcast, a lot of speakers or aspiring speakers as well. Maybe talk a little bit about the nature of what you have seen as one or two, three really powerful strategies, either leveraging a book or, leveraging a talk. If someone has a good presentation they want to give, or if they're already an author, what are some ideas that they might utilize or leverage to demonstrate their knowledge and their skill to prospects?
Yeah, so one of our main recommendations is to host your own events and put on your own, seminars and workshops for a variety of reasons. But part of it is that you control your own destiny there if you're hosting and going after your target audience. Yeah. So we can talk in more detail about what that looks like, but that would definitely be one of them. The second is just, getting out in front of an audience as much as possible, like we talked about, is so important. So whether it's an event you're doing, being a guest on somebody else's podcast, finding, conferences or organizational meetings. There's so many organizations out there that have, monthly or weekly meetings, and they need content. They need somebody to come and present. So just doing a little kind of groundwork research to see, what organizations do my target prospects belong to, and then just start reaching out to those groups, because a lot of them are just, they have to come up with a meeting, and their organizations, they're looking for people. So if you come with a really clear presentation as well. So that's the other thing, is to be really clear on, what is your message and your unique, take or stand. Because sometimes we find people want to be very broad in their topic or their audience because they think that's a safer bet. Yeah. But we actually find the opposite is true. The more focused and targeted you can be, the better the results. So, what is that, sweet spot that you really know and better than anybody else that you can do, and just focus on that in any of your writings and your speeches, and just try to make, it's a brand essentially that you're building. So same with the book. On the book end, yes, a book is a big project, and a lot of people have that goal. But you can start now in a small way. So let's say if you want to write a book, but the idea is overwhelming right now, just start in a small way. Can you write an article on the topic and start just kind of building up little things like that? Start, working the muscle really of writing. And after a while, you might find like all of a sudden you have enough content for a book. Right. We have a lot of people that have basically started with a blog they wrote for years. And then they were able to kind of turn that, with some editing and some cleanup and updating. But, it's an asset you already have. So also I would say, think of that, what assets do you already have available? Do you have a blog you've been writing or a newsletter that you've been sending out? You have more content probably than you realize. So I would say, don't be afraid of the book. Yeah. I know it's a big thing, but it's doable. And there are people that can help you with that. But it also it can open up so many doors. And also there's, I'll give you kind of a magic phrase. Yeah. My upcoming book. So at any point you can declare that you are working on a book, and you can start speaking on it and telling people and, soliciting ideas as well. That's, if you're looking for a way maybe to approach a prospect or, an organization, that's part of what you can talk about. I'm doing research for my upcoming book, and I wanted to talk to, successful professionals in this area. So you're complimenting them for one, that you guys are successful and I want to learn from you. But then it also gives you a foot in the door.
Yeah.
And then people will be like, oh, great, you're writing a book, and what is it that you do? So just be open to exploring those avenues and just start, I guess, is my biggest advice. To just start doing, the presentations and the writing on the topic that you want. It's never too soon to start.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, I can relate to so much of what you're saying. And in full transparency for everyone who's listening and watching, I am a client of Indie Books International, a proud client of Indie Books International, and am in the process of working on my upcoming book. And Devin, you and the team there have been fantastic to work with. One of the things that you mentioned, I think, is fantastic. And that's what you just said in terms of leveraging my upcoming book. There's so many ways that you can, even an aspiring author who has every intention of becoming an author and getting the book out there, you can win new business or get access to new opportunities just with that phrase, my upcoming book. And like you talked about, how to get your foot in the door and start to have meaningful conversations, leveraging the book before it even exists, I think is really powerful. One of the things too that I will mention is the first book. It's been a number of years ago now, that I co-authored with my business partner at the time, started as a series of 6 articles that he had published in a trade journal in the insurance space where we were focused. And so we were at a mastermind meeting of a small group of people here in Nashville. And the idea of writing a book and leveraging a book came out. And I asked Nelson, who was my business partner at the time, I asked him, how many articles have you written in this particular series? How many articles have you written? And he said, well, I'll just release the 6th one. And I was like, how many words per article? And he was like, I think at the time it was 1,200, 1,000 or 1,200. And I was like, well, we don't have all the word count there, but that's a heck of a start to a good book. And so we ended up taking those articles, crafting the outline of the book, and we already effectively had, a third or half the book written. And we had a ton of other content, exactly like you said. We've been writing for a while, and we had tons of other content that we could use and repurpose and slightly edit to put the book together. And we were able to go, I won't say it was perfect, Devin, and by Indie Books International, it probably didn't pass muster in terms of certain standards, quality standards. But at the time, it was what we needed. And we were able to go from zero, the idea, to publish book in hand in 6 weeks. And we released that. The reason 6 weeks and not 6 months is because we put ourselves in a possible deadline, and we released the book at a conference. And the conference was happening 6 weeks later, and Nelson had already gotten on the phone with the organizer and said, hey, do you want everybody to have a copy? And so he kind of burned our ships, so to speak, and we had to move forward. And there were typos in the book, and it wasn't perfect. But the point was, the book was now out, and it was in people's hands, and we were impacting people with the content that was in there. And for our business at the time, that was an inflection point. We went from doing okay in that year to the next year having a major growth year. And it was frankly credit to the book and our ability to leverage it. So just speaking from a firsthand experience, I can't, echo what you said enough about the power of having it. And to your point about not making it, not overinflating the difficulty of the project in your mind. Yes, it is a heavy lift, but like you said, there are people like you all to help people make it happen faster and easier. And you don't have to begin with nothing. In fact, maybe you can speak to this. I've heard people say, if you have a speech, you have a book, and that a presentation or a talk can become a great seed that can be or blossom into a book. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of our authors are professional speakers, and they've already kind of been in that world. And I feel like sometimes people are very comfortable in either writing or speaking.
Right.
Like they have a preference. And so if you are more comfortable in speaking, there are so many services that can just transcribe what you your speech, if you have a recording, you can just send that over. And then that gives you a place to start. It gives you content to start from. And yeah, you're probably kind of the outline that you go through in a speech is going to end up being pretty similar to an outline of a book.
Sure.
There's going to be, some intro of, what is the problem or the challenge? Why are we talking about this? Who you are, a little bit of an intro on, you as the guide on this journey. Think of a book that way. And then, the body would be the content. What are the lessons? What are the supporting kind of stories that reinforce those? And then typically the conclusion is a little bit of a, what's next? So what's the future look like? Once you've either mastered the book, or if you're at the end of the book and you're ready to get started, just kind of what are the next steps?
Sure.
And that's a book, but that probably sounds pretty familiar if you've done any sort of presentations.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same outline. So yeah, if you already have presentations, leverage those. Go back and watch some old recordings and just take some notes, and you'll kind of start to see, the outline of your book will start to appear that way.
That's great. Yeah, it's great insight.
Yeah, and then just from your other story, I just want to say I love that you guys did the book in 6 weeks. I love it because that's part of the problem we have sometimes with our clients is they get stuck because everybody wants like the perfect book.
Yeah,
and, if it's their first book, they will sometimes get stuck in it, and we have to kind of gently nudge them that it's important, but it's a tool.
Right.
This is a tool to help your business. It's not the end all be all of your life, in your work, because also if you're a thought leader, you should have more than one book over the course of your career.
Correct.
So don't get so stuck on the first one, and, though I would love to say that we have published the perfect book, we haven't. They don't exist. If you're the biggest traditional publisher in the world, you're going to find a typo,
exactly. Yeah.
or a sentence that could have been a little bit better. But the important part was that it was done.
Yes.
They were able to use that book. So that's my other, big piece of advice is just to, keep it in context of, yes, it's important. You want a quality product, but at the same time, you don't want to get so stuck in the perfection of it that you don't ever get to finish and use it.
Yeah.
Because, like you experienced, it can be a game changer in your business to have this tool.
No question. Absolutely. And that's really important advice because the book is such in our minds, right? And not to say, like I said before, not to say it doesn't take work and effort and attention, because it does. But we overinflate the time required, the difficulty, the challenge behind writing a book. But now more than ever, it's logistically easier to produce a book, especially when you have the right people, right? When you have the right team members and the right experts. If you're trying to learn everything and do everything on your own, that's going to be very difficult. I mean, we did in 6 weeks. It wasn't just me and Nelson doing that book, right? We had to find an editor very quickly, and we immediately started giving her pages, and we had to find a book formatter very quickly, and so we had a team around us that was also working quickly. But you're right. The most important thing about that story is not the quality of the book, although the book for 6 weeks was pretty good. The most important thing about that story is that the book was finished and that we were using that tool in 6 weeks. And of course, we gave out our first, whatever it was, 500 copies that we had printed initially. And then, 60 or 90 days later, we released a corrected version.
There you go.
We changed the manuscript and had the new version printed, and it was much, much better. And so the point, and that's the other thing, is it's not like if you have a few copies published or printed, it's not like you can't correct those things in future versions. So
not carved in stone.
Correct. Yeah, it really is. You really hit the nail on the head. Is the most important piece of that is getting the thing done so that you can actively use it. I want to switch gears just for a second and talk about still business development, but about the experience that you had or that Indie Books had related to the pandemic, because you guys do so much. You guys are kind of on the business development side from two angles. Obviously, you're developing business for Indie Books, but then you're also working with authors and speakers on business development for them, whether it's related to the book or other strategies and services. What was your experience in terms of this shift from where, because you're talking about live events, what was your experience in the shift of live in-person events to virtual? Kind of just talk about that story and maybe some of the things that you learned from that.
Yeah. Well, I will be honest, in that March, April 2020, I was very anxious and very uncertain. It was, it's funny, we had our annual authors conference that we do in the spring was the last event basically that happened in California. Wow. It was that first weekend of March, and by, the Monday or Tuesday, everything
was locked down. Yeah.
So, coming off of that, which was, our biggest conference to date, and it was a big deal, to just this like total shutdown was, concerning for me. Yeah. And I do remember talking to Henry, and so Henry, our CEO, and he said, at the heart of it, what we do is marketing, and we help people market their businesses, and people always need marketing, no matter what. They need help getting clients, and that's what we know how to do. Yeah. And that's not going to change. So he was like, we will figure out how to pivot, but we need to pivot. But at the heart of it, we have a knowledge base that we can share. Yeah. Good. So that was comforting, a comforting perspective. And we do events every year. So part of our personal strategy for growing our own business is we do, we call them, showcase events. So some sort of showcase event, we try to do 2 a month. Okay. So that's either, an event we put on, or, like I said, we get in front of another audience through, a podcast, or, being on somebody else's stage. But the goal is always 2 a month at least. So we, the other funny thing that kind of happened in 2020 was at the end of 2019, we had looked at, the year, and Henry and I were on the road so much. And we had kind of, had the discussion of like, I think we need to bring it back a little. Like that was too much travel. Yeah. Now,
be careful what you ask for, right? Yeah.
We did not mean to get rid of all travel. Yeah. But because of that, we had said, why don't we try a webinar a month? So we'll do one live presentation and one webinar. And we started that in January 2020. So we were just like one tiny toe in front of everybody else by the time March came around, which was good because those first 2 were rough. Like we didn't know what we were doing. Like we didn't have the equipment and the nice cameras everybody has now. Yeah. But we were able to kind of work some of those kinks out. So by April,
you were rocking,
100% virtual events, and we actually were able to develop a few kind of new presentations based on, what our clients were asking about and needing. Yeah. So we did a presentation on, Zoom skills and online presence. The thing that's cool about what we do is that we now know a bunch of experts in a variety of fields. Sure. We're able to call up some of our authors who are presentation experts and say, can you talk for 10 minutes on, how to interact virtually? Yeah. And so we were able to bring that together and invite, our whole network of authors and prospects too. And then we kind of just developed a few other, presentations around, how can you still go after clients? And because also early pandemic days, there was also that kind of like, people wanted to be sensitive,
Yep. Exactly.
everything was, but at the same time, we all have businesses and we needed to keep things going. So there was a lot of just, trial and error there. But at the end of the day, I would say the same strategies we had been using for live events held true.
Yeah.
We were still able to fill those events the same way we were. We were able to have, the follow-ups and leads come from them. So that was encouraging as well. And in the end, we actually grew the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And, even with the pandemic. So we were very
Fantastic.
grateful for that.
Yeah.
Certain parts of the business definitely changed.
Sure.
People were not buying physical books as much in 2020. But the ebooks went up and the webinars went up.
Yeah.
So, it was just a little different, but there were still plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, that's good. No, I think that makes sense. And of course, the timing of the beginning of your pivot was fortuitous as well. If you're open to it, I'd love to dive a little deeper into what you were referring to earlier, the showcase strategy of hosting your own virtual event. We'll kind of have a conversation about it, but maybe just sort of lay out, you've already talked about what it is, but kind of lay out when you're working with a client on a showcase strategy, or when you're doing one from indie books, kind of what are the key elements or components that someone needs to think through if they're going to host a successful, virtual or online event?
Right. So the main kind of goal and focus goes back to what we were talking about all the way at the beginning, is that we're trying to establish, that trust and give our prospects a chance to experience us in, kind of a quote unquote safe environment. So, not a scary sales pitch that they're walking into.
Right.
So the way they're designed is they are informational sessions. So typically no cost or very low cost. So it's an easy yes. It's a generous offering of helpful information. So again, you're just those things that, reinforce, what it's like to work with you and your style and your personality. And that would be attractive to prospects. And then, but also without being salesy, but at the same time, knowing we do want to lead prospects to, our services. So,
sure.
You're weaving the breadcrumbs of how you help people. And our number one recommendation there is by stories.
Yeah.
The stories that illustrate how you work with clients and the success that you've been able to help your clients achieve. We call them the mess to success stories.
Right.
And I think Henry probably went into some of that when he talked to you.
Yeah.
But those are the things that people remember the most, the stories we tell. And they also serve the purpose of illustrating that, you can do what you're saying you can do for people.
Right.
And these are the examples of that. So that kind of leads them along to the point where hopefully by the end of it, they're open to that next kind of step of a strategy call with you, which then hopefully by the end of that, you're getting towards those buying questions. So like you said, the time wasn't right. So we're trying to get them to the time where then they do want the sales conversation.
Exactly.
And they'll start asking me those questions about, how do you work with people and how much does it cost? How long does it take? So you start getting the signs from them.
Got it. That's good. And so just in terms of some basic logistics, and obviously this may vary from person to person or market to market, but in general, what do you recommend in terms of how long should one of these virtual showcases be for the average, consultant or author or speaker?
Yeah, with virtual, I would keep it, a 60-minute thing. Yeah. And really, when I say 60 minutes, you're not talking for 60 minutes straight.
Okay.
You know, and also the important of like, you start on time, you end on time, becomes very, because that's another thing that's going to subconsciously register with them.
Yep.
So if you're telling them it's a 1 hour webinar, people are busy, they got stuff to go to. So you want to make sure you're keeping, to that, making sure you're ending on time. Just that kind of, those little things mean a lot. And then it's a little more challenging to do the interaction piece on virtual. That's probably one of the biggest difference from our live presentations, but you can still do it. So we try to say, if it's a 60-minute webinar, you're probably only talking 30 to 40 minutes. Okay. And then there's points in the program where you can have some interaction. So, as something as simple as just having people, introducing themselves and, what brought you here today, I can make sure I cover, that point, something like that just gets them involved. Q&As, things like that. And that's, they can use the chat feature. It's pretty simple. And I think at this point, almost everybody has been on Zoom so much. They use it. The polls feature, just anything to just break it up a little bit. Because it is hard.
Not just one person
stare at somebody talking at you. Yeah. A talking head for an hour. So you want to just kind of make it fun and interactive, and build that into it. But so I would say, 60-minute webinars is where we are virtually. That's
excellent. And I'm just kind of asking you random detailed questions based on your experience. In terms of, does it matter day of the week or time of day? I guess part of that might be based on, are you a national presentation where you've got people from different time zones or possibly international? What is your all's perspective on day or time of day? Does it matter if you seen?
I think it matters a little bit. We try to keep them Tuesday to Thursday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
That makes sense. Sure.
And then, so we do invite, that is a benefit of going virtually, is now we can invite people from all around the country.
Right. Yeah. The universe is much larger now.
Yeah. We actually have had a few international people attend as well. So maybe sometimes you can kind of experiment with the times and kind of test a few. We typically do 11 a.m. Pacific time. We just did one this morning. So that kind of puts you midday for East Coast. It's not too late for them yet. But for Pacific Coast people, they've gotten to, come in, check their emails, take care of a few things, and then they can take an hour out of their day. So I would be careful going too late, unless your audience has a specific preference. When we used to do live events, if the target was CEOs, you could say, do a breakfast briefing.
Okay, early. Yeah.
Early, and also, keep it fast, like get them in, get them out, because they need to get on with their day. Yeah. So some of that is, just kind of feeling out your audience. But now with virtual, it's a little more fluid. Plus, you're going to get a lot of people that are not going to be able to come live, that will sign up for an event, and they'll just want the recording.
Okay.
To watch later, which is still good. it still gets you in front of them. So I would say just, have that as an option as well for people to just be flexible, because I think that's the biggest thing right now. Everybody just needs flexibility. From one day to the next, a school, all of a sudden the school's closed and the kids are home, and so you want to make it easy on them.
Well, the irony of your statement, of course, it's the world we're in right now as we're recording this. But the reality of your statement is, right before we started this interview recording, I was on the phone with my sister, and she just told me that the nieces are coming home tomorrow because schools are closed. So,
keep hearing it. It's happening so much. Yeah.
You made an interesting point, and this is something that I've always wondered about, whether, showcase virtual event like we're talking about, or the quote unquote traditional webinar type of process, or obviously it always makes sense to record them for your own use, if not to share, right? So that should be a given, and it's so easy to do now. The question I have is when you're promoting, and this kind of takes us into that side of the discussion, when you're promoting a virtual event like this, do you let people know that it will be recorded, and if they can't attend, they should go ahead and register, or do you wait and try to get people there live and then provide the recording kind of after the fact, after someone hasn't shown up? And I don't know there's a right answer to this, frankly, but what's your perspective on that question?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and I'm like, no, we have never actually said we are going to record them, but we always do.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why we never did.
Again, I don't know if there's a better option or not, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it probably is a good idea to tell them that, still sign up if you can't attend live, and, we'll make sure you get the recording. Because, if they are interested in your topic enough to, take that, at least the first step of, going to your landing page or your sign up form, you don't want to lose that potential prospect there, just for a simple thing of them being like, oh, that time doesn't work for me.
Sure. So, yeah, that's a good note. And of course, the opposite argument is, if you tell them that you're going to record it and make it available, they'll just sign up and never have the intention of attending, which means they may never see it. So, yeah, no, it's kind of I think both answers could be effective. Maybe it's really based more on who your market is, and that type of thing. So I was just curious. So yeah, that's fascinating. It would be interesting to test one way or another and see what happens. And again, it's probably going to be so dependent upon the nature of the market. When you guys are promoting these, what's your attendance targets? And again, this is going to vary as well based on who your client is and so forth, who you're working with. But generally, rule of thumb, how many people should we be targeting to attend, and how does that kind of break down in terms of registrations to attendees?
Right. So we are kind of big proponents of keeping them small. So, we call them small scale seminars, because, for us, building in that option to have interaction and connect more personally, it has to be a small enough group that you can do that in the time frame.
Sure.
So, for virtual, I would say that puts you more in the, 10 to 20 range. If you have multiple presenters, you might be able to go a little bit bigger, because you can have, somebody can be kind of manning the chat while the other is speaking. And then when you switch, things like that. So,
sure.
But what we do find on virtual presentations is if you get 50% of the people that register, you're doing fantastic.
Gotcha. You're talking about it's actually people who actually show up.
Right.
50% of the registrants actually show up. That's you're doing well.
You're doing well. That's probably our highest that we've ever had.
Yeah.
And we've had as low as like 2 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we still put on the event, they wanted the topic. So we gave them our best, and then we had the recording for others.
Right.
But so with that in mind, if you're hoping to get somewhere between 10 and 20 live, when you're doing your marketing, you want to be shooting for probably double that to sign up.
Gotcha.
Would be ideal.
Understood. That makes sense. And just going into the promotion a little bit, and we don't have to get into too much the nitty gritty here, but in general, what is that? How is that done? What is the general process for or platform that you use? How do people learn about this and decide to attend?
Yeah, so it's a mix of options. So, we have, kind of the traditional, we post on our social media, we send it out to our newsletter list.
Sure.
But then the other ones that we've kind of started to build up, one is referrals. Mm-hmm. So we try to, let our past clients or people that have been big advocates and referral sources for us know about upcoming events, so that, if there's anybody you know of that could help, this topic could help them, please share. And then the other one that we developed was using LinkedIn as an outreach strategy.
Okay.
And that has really been a powerful tool for us because it's built for networking, business people, and super powerful search capabilities. So if you're clear on your target audience, you're able to find them. And then we just kind of developed a pretty simple 2-step invitation process that we send out to them. So again, that, focusing on being, generous, offering information at no cost, not spamming people. Because unfortunately that has started to creep up on LinkedIn quite a bit in the last couple of years. So, it's just making sure you're positioning it in a way that is keeping to the essence of that platform, which is about connecting and building relationships. So, that kind of give to get mentality, that's what you're trying to do. But it is a powerful tool, and one that I feel like a lot of people have not tapped into. So
that's good.
If you are interested in learning more or seeing, sample messages and stuff like that, we have a white paper on it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So if you want to email me, I'd be happy to share it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what we'll do, Devin, I do want you to give any information in just a second about indie books and share your email and all that. Also, just for everybody watching and listening, we will also put all that information in the show notes, actually hyperlinked. So you'll be able just to click and get access to anything that Devin shares in just a minute. That is phenomenal. And tell me a little about the experiences you guys have had with the showcase strategy. I know you've been doing this for indie books for a while, but you've also been doing this with clients for a while. And I'm fascinated to know, experiences that you've had that have made a difference for people you've worked with.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you about Michael. So Michael Haig is one of our authors. He is a Hollywood storytelling expert, script consultant, just brilliant at what he does. He's the person Will Smith calls up when he wants advice on his next project.
Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he had written several books already on screenwriting and fiction writing. He had come to us for his new book, which was Storytelling Made Easy, which was geared at how business professionals could use the same Hollywood storytelling formula in the stories they tell in presentations and marketing materials to, win over clients. But the problem he had was that this was a totally new audience for him.
Okay. Yeah.
And, he was kind of coming to us with how do I get in front of these people? How do I reach this group? Because up to that point, he had been working more on, fiction and movie side. He taught at, universities, or he was brought into kind of writers' retreats and weekends. So he never really had to actively go after a new audience.
Yeah.
So we said, our number one recommendation is to do these small scale seminars and, host an event yourself. I will say he was a little, unsure. Right.
Yeah. A little resistant at first. Yeah.
But, we said, I will do this with you. I will show you how to do it. We will put together a presentation. At the time we were live. And one of the things that we were recommending when people were trying this at the beginning was, if you're already traveling somewhere for an event, just add a day onto your trip and, book a meeting room and host your own event. So that's kind of what was happening. He was going to Portland for a workshop. So we just added a day to his trip, and we decided okay, let's try Portland.
Right. Yeah. Portland it is. Yeah.
Portland it is. So we set out with we decided to focus on marketing professionals.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And we kind of built the topic around that, how they can use, work in storytelling techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And we just kind of set out with that same strategy of, let's use LinkedIn as a primary driver. I mean, we'll also, kind of let his network know, but
sure,
let's use LinkedIn to drive it.
Mm-hmm.
And we set those, attendance goals like we talked about. So for Michael, we did say, live in person, because also his storytelling formula interaction piece, it takes some time for a story. Gotcha. So we were saying, I think, keep it more like 6 to 12 people. But he was used to talking to kind of big lecture halls. So
I see.
He did push back a little bit there. Yeah. And his goal was 24.
Okay.
So we said, okay, we'll set kind of, the range. So, it's a go if we get 10 people, mm-hmm. We'll kind of put 15 as our stretch goal. And then, the 24 can be our really big goal.
Yeah.
But we used that LinkedIn, strategy, and we were actually able to get 19 people
to
RSVP and attend this event.
Yeah.
And the other kind of piece that we've been talking about is, it's a no cost event. Mm-hmm. We want you to offer a follow-up, no cost strategy call, all those things. That was the advice we were giving Michael.
Yeah.
And his big fear was, if I give this all away for free, nobody's going to want to hire me.
This is something absolutely. This is a great question. I'm glad that you brought this up in the context of the story, because I should have asked the question. So yes, please continue.
Yeah. I mean, it's the big kind of question behind everybody.
Yeah.
We get a lot. And we said, yes, you are giving away valuable content, but you're teaching in a broad way. Mm-hmm. So, for all of us, you're giving kind of the high level. So it's still helpful, actionable information.
Yeah.
But, if they're interested, they're going to want to hire you for the specifics of their situation.
Yeah. So
again, it's just that you're illustrating that what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Service. So we said, please trust us on this. Just try it. Just try it. Right. Yeah. And so we had a form basically that they could fill out at the end that, yes, I would like the follow-up strategy call with Michael. So of the 19 people that attended, 18 checked yes on the form.
Wow.
And it turns out the 19th person in the room was his sister-in-law who had come to support him. So we actually count it as 100% success rate.
Absolutely. Everybody checked the box. That's great. Wow.
And within a week, one of those follow-up calls turned into a contract that covered the cost of the entire, traveling to the event, renting the room, paying for marketing help.
Everything.
All from one engagement with a client. Yeah. Plus, he had 17 other prospects in his pipeline to pursue. So just, we also recommend, you do a couple events in a row so you can test out things, try it.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
A month later, he had, similar situation. He was going to Nashville for another event. Mm-hmm. So we had him do the same thing in Nashville. Mm-hmm. He did agree this time with us that a slightly smaller group would be better.
Okay.
So that he could get through helping and coaching more. So at that one, there were 15 people. Mm-hmm. And at that one, they didn't even wait for the follow-up call. He had somebody that said, I want this, I need this, and hired him that day.
Wow.
Before they left. So that's how powerful this strategy can be. And that chance for them to interact with you and experience you is, it's just so powerful. So, like I said, we're about to turn 8 years old, and this strategy has grown our business and we happily have taught it to a lot of our clients and helped them grow their businesses the same way.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I mean, when you start to dissect sort of the psychology behind the strategy, it makes perfect sense that someone who is a potential buyer of a consultant services is going to need and want to see them in action. And that is so much easier for a potential prospect to do in an environment like what you're talking about with a small scale seminar, as opposed even to an initial one-on-one conversation. Now, certainly, I'd rather have a one-on-one conversation. If someone didn't attend the session and I'm following up with them, I'm happy to have the one-on-one conversation and help them wherever I can and demonstrate my value on a one-on-one. But it becomes so much more powerful when that economic buyer, when that prospect is sitting in that room, watching you do your thing, and the light bulb goes off for them and they say, oh, I need this. Or they're watching the light bulbs go off for all their peers who are in the room, right? There's almost a peer pressure type of thing that happens when you've got multiple people who are involved and interacting and edifying the authority at the front of the room too, which is valuable in and of itself. Listen, thank you so much for kind of providing that great overview of the strategy. I think it's phenomenal. So I want you to share your contact information, but one last question from a content basis that I ask every interview guest that I have. Lessons learned, personal or professional, lessons learned that might be valuable for you to impart to our viewers and listeners out there. And I know it's a big, broad question, so there's no right or wrong, Devin.
I think for me, the biggest thing I have learned personally and in working with our clients is kind of to not do it alone. Whatever challenge you're doing, and I think your audiences are consultants, so they know this well. There's always somebody that knows something that you don't really well, and to really be comfortable reaching out for that and getting the help and the support, because there's one thing that I know really well and I can help people, but there's other things that I don't.
Sure.
But I feel like a lot of people feel like they have to do it all themselves, or they have to know it all. And in context of the books, we also find, people feel like they have to have it written and done before they ever talk to us.
Oh, wow.
A lot of times we're like, no, it's way better to talk to us
early.
When you're thinking about the book, so that we can help you make sure you're writing the right book, the book that's going to serve you. So there's just a lot of those things that I feel like, just being open to asking for help and finding the person that, has the expertise you need.
I think it's a great reminder. And I'll speak from personal experience here too. It's so easy, especially for independent consultants where we're owning our own business or we're an owner operator. It's so easy for us to think that we are the one that have to wear all the hats. We have to do everything, even though, to your own point that you just made a second ago, we're consultants and we should be saying the same things to our clients. Don't try to do it all on your own, right? Let people who have expertise help you. But so often that part of it we struggle with. So I love your lesson and your sentiment there, and it's a good reminder for all of us. So Devin, if someone wants to get in touch with you, you mentioned this white paper that you'd written about the showcase strategy and small scale seminars that you're willing to share, which is incredibly generous. Thank you. If someone wants to get access to that or reach out to you or learn more about Indie Books International, what's the best way for them to connect or reach out?
Yeah, so you can either visit our website. So we're Indie, so INDIE, booksinternational.com. Or I can be reached directly at Devin, and it's DEVIN, at indiebooksintl.com for our emails.
Good. That's fantastic. So, and we'll make sure that the link to the Indie Book site is on the show notes, and a link to your email is also there as well, so people can reach out directly. And if they're interested in getting a copy of the white paper, you said it's best for them just to email you directly and make the request.
Yeah. And, you can keep it simple. You can just put white paper in the subject line.
Yeah.
That's all I need.
Yeah. Let Devin know where you heard her, this interview, and she'll send that over to you. Thank you so much for being willing to do that. That's fantastic. And thank you so much for your expertise and your time, for demonstrating your authority and knowledge today, Devin. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I know everyone's gotten a lot of value from it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, for Consulting with Authority, this is Scott Cantrell, as always, wishing you all the best of success. Thank you for listening. I hope you got a ton of value out of this episode. And before we go, I want to thank the sponsor of our show, Smart Solutions Media. Smart Solutions Media empowers business owners, consultants, and other independent professionals to easily attract better prospects and transform them into long-term clients. If you're a B2B consultant or service professional and would like to start filling your pipeline with better quality prospects, visit us on the web at smartsolutionsmedia.com to learn more about what we can do to help you. Be sure to complete the short 2-minute accelerated growth scorecard you can find on the website, and you'll receive a complimentary strategy session where we'll give you specific insights and recommendations to help you attract high-value clients. Until next time, make sure you are consulting with authority.